I'm really delighted to have Alina Stefanescu and Adela Sinclair tonight at the Literary Excursions. What a beautiful month for you to come, the month of flowers, the month of May. It's a real celebration of feminine, I don't know, excitement, I suppose, and hopefulness. I mean, we do want to look to hope, and we want to look to truth and to language. So I understand that the two of you will read together, will organize your readings as a response to each other in terms of the poems. So I look forward to this performance, but I just want to say a couple of words about each of the poets tonight. Alina Stefanescu was born in Romania. She now lives in Birmingham, Alabama. Her recent books include a creative nonfiction chapbook, Rebelled, with Bow City Press series, and Door, which I reviewed in Harvard Review, is a wonderful, wonderful book. It won the Wandering Angus Press Prize, and her debut fiction collection, Every Mask I Tried On, won the Bright Horse Book Prize. Alina's poems, essays, and fiction can be found in Prairie Schooner, North American Review, World Literature Today, Pleiades Poetry, and many, many others. She serves as poetry editor for several journals. She's a reviewer and critic for others, and she is a co-director of PEN America's Birmingham chapter. Well, I would like to learn more about your novel-like creature that you're working on now, Alina. So maybe you can tell us about this at the question time. Adela Sinclair is NYFA New York Foundation for the Arts, grant-winning Romanian-American poet. There we are, translator and teacher. She is fluent in English, Romanian, and French. Poetry is her primary, but not the exclusive medium. Her book of poems, La Revedere, which is in English translates as goodbye, is now in pre-sales through her publisher, Finishing Line Press. And I know that you share the press with Pramila as well. She publishes there. Her poetry explores themes of cultural identity, memory, loss, trauma, and desire. She is a founding member and poetry editor of the emerging literary magazine Unbound Brooklyn, and volunteers with Ugly Duckling Press in Brooklyn. Adela lives on Roosevelt Island with her partner Michael. And I looked that up actually because I didn't know where it was, and it does look like a beautiful place to live. I'm very happy to have the two of you here tonight. It's a huge honor, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for showing up. And it's 5 o'clock where you are, Alina? 5 something? Yeah. It's mountain time. So may I put the Finishing Line Press link to the book for anyone that hasn't yet pre-ordered it? I will post it in link. Let's see. Okay. And should I start by reading something? Yeah. I read a poem, a beautiful poem by Alina called Little Time that was published. I don't recall the publication, so chime in anytime. And this came about, and it's entitled Little Insect, after Raluca. After Alina Stefanescu, of course. Little Insect. We must go inside, he said. The insects were rampant and starting to bite. The balmy night air was thick, their song perpetuating itself in the valley. We must not forget their DNA when speaking about insects. XX, don't go missing your Y. The crown comes with a price, he said. Princess, she wanted to be called, or maybe she said priceless. We must talk about endurance when it comes to insects. They buzz around in circles, so get dizzy and misfire at them. Mercy with a dose of merriment. In the end, we sum it up to being outlived by trees, insects, mountains. We must give power where it's due. The perpetrator is the culprit, not the victim. Even so, in sects, some of them, victimization works both ways. Incest in a home always translates into crime, the flowers in the attic, consanguinity, punishable till eternity. We must power through this cold winter, he said. The snowflakes are messages that one must catch while in flight, and at the first touch they disappear, melt into the couch you are sitting on, lime green. Draw from experience what you must keep. Endurance is a virtue. We must outlive metal, radiant in our sheen green carapace. Our bodies are always levitating. Reminded of flies, their daring dirt. When I get dirt under my nails, I obsessively clean them and cut them short. So short, I bleed.
Thank you, Adela. I almost wanted to read Little Time, but I think I'm going to read a different one in response. And this is from the current manuscript, which has been fortunate so far as a finalist, but it's called Byline Be Sky, and it's about bylines, it's about origins, but it's also very much about God, or about spirituality, and about this amorphous space that I don't understand. I'm going to read The Emotional Life of Angels.
Oh.
And I should add that a lot of these poems came after my mother really loved Saint Maximus the Confessor. And I went through all her old books and found all this marginalia she wrote when she was going through a divorce, sort of notes for herself. And she's gone. And so I have this wonderful dialogue, or this ongoing discussion with her marginalia from times in her life when she wasn't telling me what was hurting her or how she was coping. There were times of, these were conversations she didn't have with me. And they were in books on her shelves, and so there's a sort of dialogue that is going on there too, with her marginalia, which in some of the poems is highlighted, but not in this one, The Emotional Life of Angels. You quoted a learned man when you said baptism was the metaphysical button, the big beat that one's guardian angel would hear to begin guarding. Do we each have our own? Or do we share guardians like toddlers at daycare? I suspect officials keep us tethered to discord in birthlands. My guard is hard to understand. He whispers to me in Balkan jargon. The angels born there must be many-tongued polylinguists. Maybe I am a sausage. Maybe I am a stew. Certainly I cannot speak when my guard jiggles the key, when his eye fills the cell with a avertinal joy, the terminal glee, which comes from closeness to God's radiance. Listen, I would rather not die to know for once who is lying.
Just breathing. My guard is hard to understand. Maybe I am a sausage or stew, tokanica. Whew. So beautiful, Alina. Heart-wrenching too. Yeah. So I will respond with a poem that is in the current collection entitled Notes on the Disappearances of Children, and it was almost the title of the collection, and I realized I don't want to scare already a very tiny audience away by diminishing their interest from taking place from reading the book in the first place. So Notes on the Disappearances of Children. This happened actually. I pretty much write about what I write witness poetry and things that happen. And I don't recall the end of the story, so I left it hanging. So here we go. Notes on the disappearances of children. Was it autumn? Were we visiting our friends in their small town? Were the city planners dead? A playground outside the town cemetery. The man approached us swiftly. One cannot tell the head from the tail of a snake in the tall grass. The man was wearing a black trench coat. The sky was a deep shade of gray. He glided. A ghost? Run! The crow warned us. We were swinging high above the fence. The graves, the headstones, let the man out of the woods. He came for us. What are children to do? The crow warned us against the coming of the man. No wind, yet the gate keeps ringing.
That crow and the gate that is not there, but the sounds. I love how the sounds haunt your poems. And I'm going to read one that is barely sonic, but I'm also going to put it here just in case anyone has trouble reading or hearing me. And I know I'm a little susurita. I don't know what it's called, susurration in the US. And sometimes people have a hard time understanding me. So I'm putting that, that link to this poem there. It's called The Krakow Nude. The framed photo used to hang in the hallway of my single mom apartment. Hair loose, lips lit by laughter, me naked, but for a man's white cotton undies and arms angled like unmapped pyramids behind my head. In my apartment, black mold lined each air vent like velvet, and valiant rats scattered their marble feces across the floor. I read them like runes or coffee grounds. Back then, my husband was just a friend who came over, drank whiskey, watched me blend baby food, talking smack to my toddler, acting shocked by the Krakow nude I kept. I kept and keep thinking it was hot and I'm not sorry. And now is the opposite of then, when it was summer and I was younger in freedom in Eastern Europe. I was splendid, the rapt owner of raw swollen breasts that could overflow goblets. I was pregnant and plotting how to escape the unwanted parts I was not yet, the abortion or the intentional miscarriage. I wore this plenitude of crimes on my chest, like little bullets that missed me by an inch.
Wow. Again, I need a moment to let it wash over me, to let it, wow. It's beautiful because we had a conversation, if I may bring it up, Alina, on Sunday about fathers and silence, and there's such a beautiful feminine presence here in what you've read so far. It's welcoming and it's ever present, and the angels, and it's very beautiful. do you want to add anything or say something? Sorry, I'm not. I'm like thinking of how to open up the conversation, the dialogue as well, and to
Right.
perhaps enter. Yeah, go ahead.
We were having an interesting discussion about homelands and history, and something that happens in, or that we recognize, is this sort of, when people come from Romania, a lot of times the past stays there, and the older generations are happy to leave it there, to not have those, to not bring it up, to not break those silences. And those silences stay, in a sense, inside houses, inside bodies, inside relationships, where they become this icy space that you can slide over or hit your head on. And and my dad, the way he phrased it, and Carmen's books are so apt in conveying this. He said there was no therapy. You didn't have therapy. You just had to survive. Anyone you tried to talk to, talking wasn't a solution. And Danilo Pish says this as well. Talking doesn't resolve all the problems all over the world. It's useful in countries where people listen, or where the individual matters, or where a life matters. But talking cures don't exist everywhere. And we were talking about that, and talking about poetry, and talking about our own sort of attempts to touch the ice or to melt it a little bit. And also this, my parents also had this fear of, a psychiatrist is going to report everything to the government. It was just unheard of to them. It was just very hard for them to understand that wasn't really what people did here. Although in Alabama, I can see that physicians will probably start having to report what's happening in bodies that are pregnant to the government, which is very scary.
Yeah. Thank you for being so open about talking about the abortion and being in Alabama and being so it's imminent, it's important, it's grave. So I'm going to bring the dad into the picture, and with strange and ridiculous lies of the father. And don't let my dad into the Zoom room if he shows up. Pramila, I'm kidding. Strange and ridiculous lies of the father. If I were to know Greek, I'd speak in tongues. The glossolalia of my youth would overwhelm me now. The clouds and dense air steal my willpower, seal my lips with the fear of a sex victim who wants to tell her story, but does not want to be in the forensics lab for hours with cops around. In my own world of words, I am mystified by the face of the rapist peeling off the sculpted face of Zeus. He is angry, and the many reddish hues betray him. His eyes tell the story of his darkness. His soul is dense. When I was younger, Dad had to travel for 2 hours for work, so he'd stay during the week in a small village up north and visit us on the weekends. The joy of gifts and shuhaida, the house chocolate he would lavish us with, was immense. Once I learned Dad beat a man to a pulp with his fists for trying something on my mother, hitting on her. Hit the man so badly the man almost died. So the story goes. On the bridge over the river Murash, his body lay till morning. The red gloves, the barbed wire, and the busted nose are all that were left of the forgotten memory. How much does each remembrance cost us? A life? Does it weigh us down with what we could have been or what could have damaged us more? Dad was not quick to confess, except later in life. when I drove him from Naples to Bonita Springs in Florida, on the straight and wide highway among orange groves, from the back seat, his voice calm and remorseful. I heard Melissa Fabos's voice, her hunger for pain, felt her bruises on my arms and back, the flagellations of the past. I am not confused. I am a victim of my own devices. I am the victim of my abuser. Skinny high heels can't hold me now. In the red 90s Saab I drove, Dad shed light on the lies. The glossolalia marked his face with wrinkles, emaciated his body, disabled his cells. The cancer spread. I learned about pain from him, disassembled his choices with my scalpel, not to allow myself to slip into lies that would kill me one day, too.
That's a very powerful poem. And the glossolalia was just sticks in my mind and in my head. Thank you for reading that and for sharing it.
Thank you, Alina.
I'm going to take your clouds and I'm going to look at what we owe the world or ask what we owe the world. And I'm going to think of, I love how, I love acknowledgements. I love sometimes reading acknowledgements in books because they're almost like a poem. And you can kind of tell, I don't know, someone's heart sometimes comes out, just overflows in them. And so I'm going to read a poem titled Acknowledgements, which it looks like this. So acknowledgements. The hulls of wrecked ships, the plum trees and ghosted lindens, the blues of wooden icons at midnight. The dark hallways, the dark, the even darker of all. The nice women with snakes growing from holes in their heads. The child reciting a poem outdoors as the wind steals it before anyone hears it. The poem the child becomes because of the wind's lust for words, because so many marvels are born in theft, because lightning is a male identifying God when upset, because wind argues with lightning when stealing poems from children. Oh, and the generosity of aeons, the mud-drenched wedding dress. Thank you. The rickety wood chairs where things happened, the lies who got infected and left moon-colored scars, the liars, the metaphysics of festering, matins, vespers, the coins of your realms. Oh, violence of begging for money to fund an abortion. I would be nothing without you. Same for those who said no, those who said yes, those who preferred I pay them back with sex.
Alina, I wrote a poem, if I'm able to respond. I didn't have it ready, but the paying back in sex. And I will take a moment to just pull it up because it's in response to what you just read. So if anyone now has thought, a question, or a remark, it's a good time. I need just a couple of moments to pull it up, please. Thank you.
If anyone has a question or a thought, Adela looks, feel free to.
Yeah, I have it, but if anyone wants to interject, please feel free.
You have it?
Yeah, I have it. Yeah. Okay. When the money runs out, will you pay for it with your body, through your body, or in your body? Will you park your body in the doorframe? Passers-by must fumble and rub their bodies against your own parked there, just like so. Why can't I find the poetry in this? So what if the boy started wearing light-colored clothes, different framed glasses? So what if he reviews books on TV and I don't? So what? I heard he burned all his biker clothes and leather jackets and boots. My bad, I mean books. On a cellular level, I know it is wrong to hoard so many first editions and then post-mortem donate them to Christie's. Who the fuck benefits from this now? Give to the rich. Keep fucking for money. Keep fucking yourself over for money. Keep the fucking money and run. The boy pays for it with his pastel pink shirt and blue pants. I can still sniff the tattoos under his long sleeve shirt. He cannot apply for a professor's job with his conjecture, nor can the biker in him die. Nor can the bookseller, most famous bookseller, read in heaven, and in hell his books don't stand a chance. Either way, he is fucked, and we are in luck. As I stand in the doorway, my mother passes by me, and the scent of her sweat and perfume mixed together like a collage that shouldn't work but does reminds me that I am and have an inner child. She is not easily amused by my spending and binging. I spend through the cash money so I don't have to carry wealthy people problems with fat bank accounts. How dumb. I therefore overeat to not stand my body and its curves. I could not even pay with my body now, even if I wanted to. So we keep on thinking fat shaming is a sin. I mentally do it all the time. This hellish purgatory I'm in, my body pays over and over, stuck in the doorway of no returns. There is a certain violence when they enter me, a sense of poverty of spirit I sense in them. Yet, like in a museum, they keep coming to experience the installation.
I love the end note on the installation and the ending there, which is so powerful. Going back to this idea of like moving back and forth between time. And I think one of the strangest things is discovering how my own thoughts have changed. There's this really fun writing exercise you can do where you write down 10 things you thought when you were 10, and then how you think of them now, and try and play with a sort of poem. And I'm going to read something that came out of that, which is called Think Piece. And both of these, or this one, but its partner is also in a forthcoming manuscript that I don't think has been, is not public yet, but it's about the South. So it's called Think Piece. I think the poet's mercy is boundless, and dread is an empty matchbook, and fire has never been easier to make. I think gas station restrooms are vectors for rambling germs and bacteria, so family road trips involve stopping to piss in meadows and ditches where we add the GPS coordinates of each chosen rest stop to our places we have peed Google Map. I think my fear translates into a form of fearlessness. I think my children believed in fairies longer than usual because I believed in fairies with them. I think violence is embarrassing, and PDA is a living art that competes with local murals for exuberance. I think every act of kindness deserves to be amplified by a solid case study. I think studying is the cheapest salvation. I think salvation is neither salve nor ending. I think advanced degrees make us feel brighter, bigger, relevant to the man spitting snuff in a can. I think the speed of light is still impossible to fathom as my son explains the math among the symphony of fiddlehead ferns. I think warblers have stopped singing to admire my son's words. I think doomsday folk wear their hair very buzzcut or business, as if the industry of world ending demands militant attention to personal hygiene. I think no one knows what God knows when a bullet misses its target. I think plans misfire, but God's will outlasts its independence. I think baked potatoes soaked in mayonnaise will always be delicious. I think the sad kids in books are my friends.
I love the references about the bathroom in the gas stations, the GPSing, um, and the sad kids in books are also my friends. We spoke about music at some point, and I mentioned, I don't know, we may, yeah, definitely. I agree with Pramila. We may be able to play something like a small sequence. I don't know if we can do that here, but I'd like to. And you made me think of list poems and how the repetition of I think gets us deeper and deeper into the thinking of Alina Ștefănescu, but also your heart, your soul, your everything. And I would like to respond with an I remember poem, a list poem as well. And here it is. I remember Jon's dad bursting through the classroom doors, throwing his son between the rows of desks and kicking him hard. I was in second grade. I remember the milkman coming to our house, the milk bottle caps we'd turn into silver stars to decorate our Christmas tree. I remember pasteurizing our milk. I remember wanting to only wear brown clothes for the rest of my life. I was in high school then. I remember shopping at the local thrift store and eating a BLT each Friday. I was at SUNY Albany. I remember my first color TV. It was during the 1984 Olympics that we got it. I remember eating the same thing for lunch each day for at least 10 years, lard on dry bread with salt and paprika. I remember getting my period for the first time. I was wearing pink tights. The blood stained them. When I was in the bathroom and took them off, I yelled with surprise. I remember feeling safe as a child. I remember by the time the waitress brought the ice cream, it was melted. Nowadays, I place my bowl in the microwave to recreate it. I remember when the ambulance hit the motorcyclist. He fell out of his seat directly on his head. Dad ran to help. The man's head was starting to bleed in the middle of the street. He lay there, immobile in a pool of his own blood. We dropped our bags of peanuts. I remember rose petal juice. It was pink, sometimes yellow. I remember the changing room at the outdoor pool. It was made of wooden planks with plenty of space for eyes to see you changing. I remember I became aware and self-conscious of my naked body. I remember melting into the pool, sinking underwater, how my nostrils filled with water. I remember the green gate of our house. I knew who came home without seeing them by how they slammed the gate. I remember the pig's ears fresh off the pig's head, sinking my teeth into them, charred and chewy. I remember the first really bad bicycle accident I had. I remember acculturation versus assimilation. Joe Brainerd, I think, did this in a whole book of writing, and it's very powerful. The leaps I take, I think, are my forte. It has no logical sense, but yes, thank you, Alina. Yeah, Brainerd and Ruffle. Whew. And it's like it feels very spiraling, kind of, not down or in any other direction, but sideways spiraling, in more and more spirals that you're, um, that's the image I have after reading that. Yeah.
I love I remember poems. I think um, I think one of the interesting and important points that Brainerd made with that book, and he was kind of inspired by Borges too. He had this idea of just wanting to list everything that happened, but it belonged to the world. Like his memory, in a sense, by just listing the most trivial things, it would evoke a broader memory of a time. But he also wanted it to not be located in time. It was he's a fascinating writer and thinker in many ways. In his goals, there's a really good interviews about him that I think were published by Wave, and that talk about some of the thoughts he was having. So I love I Remembers, and I love how that one ended with that sort of juxtaposition of assimilation and acculturation, which is a great way to end it. And so we're in all this memory space, and for me, a lot of times with all the chaos of kids' life, the demands of work, just trying to get things done, a poem will usually come with something very small, and and that's what I remember. That's what I take. I take that image, and then it comes back to me later, and I try to do something with it if I remember it. I wish I could write all of them down, but one thing that has happened, and after it rains here on our porch, there's always a lot of snails that come out, and I have one daughter who is so afraid of crushing a snail. And she will take the snails off of the step. She'll run around after the rain, the littlest, and pick up all the snails so that no one will crush them. Unfortunately, we got a dog named Radu, and Radu eats snails. He's like an escargot eater, so he will literally suck the snails out. And he's unbelievable. I love him. He's the worst boy on the planet. Just the worst. Like every negative quality a dog could have, he has, and I adore him. So maybe that's my age now. But I'm going to read a poem that is called Tonight as You Pace the Garden. And it came from a snail, strangely enough. And a lot of poems that I write are sort of in dialogue with my husband, who is a very private person, a sort of very different person from me. So, tonight as you pace the garden, I am eating raw violets. I am curious about the possessing in the having been possessed. I am present for the pastness. That bird bath sprawled on its side has forsaken its purpose, has given the snails a steeple without a church. You say lazy daisy, but I am all languor. I am all lolling as recovering from visual pintucks, and halftime as a noun between goalposts for people who want things. But I am all cheering, is what we do to shush up the crowd inside. I am possessing the bittiest breaths of your pacing. And the snails, they possess the steeple. The snails have a path to the sky.
It's, I was thinking about light when you were reading that, and holes, and I think it was not Muriel Rukeyser, but I see the cover of the book. It's called Holes and Light. Um, whew. So I saw glistening, I saw light, and yet it brought me to this. So don't ask why. Just go for it. Go with it. Go with me on a ride. In response, I do not know what epiphany to bury myself under, or rather bury you in. Forgive me, Father, for I make you wait while I await the ring that will glide on my finger as he glided into my life 4 years ago. As you glide from having hair and eyebrows for expressions to losing all your hair, dear Father. I repeat, I am not sure what epiphany will court me now when I am courted by a happy life with my lover. I cannot tell you what to do, dear sir, nor tell you how long to wait, and how long of a wait is too long of a wait. Allow me to get to the refrain, also known as the chorus. The pits of the day dragged me down under, and your voice, Father, while the chemo raged, your veins, Father, was my saving grace. I love the afternoon calls, no matter what the matter is, or what beach you are walking on, and what sunset is yours or mine. What's the difference? I live in the big city, and you by the sea. All the while I started on the same raft as you, drifted for years away from the shore of our birth country, towards hazards and lights. You gave up on it, Father. I do not blame you. It ravages anyone who lives here. My sensitivity carries me towards the light. I noticed the light this evening, sliced and strewn like cotton candy into a vast sky. I sometimes want to throw in the towel and leave the big city and bury my nose in books in a cottage in the countryside. At least memories transformed my writing. I copied words from books, and they transformed me, as I transformed them. With light dissipating more quickly up north, I then used the lamp's yellow center to soothe me. I worked my way towards my center, all the while the cancer ate your center. It is the holes, then light, I will remember, when I am long gone, long dissolved, long forgotten.
I love the lyric and the sort of motion of that poem. Have you read any from your current manuscript, from your book that's coming out?
You mean La Vedera?
Yeah.
Notes on the disappearances of children, but you know how artists go and how books go and how feelings go. Would you like me to read something from that? I can.
I feel like I want to hear something from it. I feel like it's wrong to be mean to our books. I know I've been mean to Dor, and I should probably give Dor something, something, however small.
So okay, fine. A prose poem. It's a box. It's a box. It's a box. Not symbolic of the book itself, but it's in there. Bloody slide. Topogan. At Dedi's butcher shop. Oh, it's Dedi is grandfather, and he was the butcher. Yeah. Topogan. At Dedi's butcher shop, after the slaughter on the first floor, the meat makes its way down to the basement. The butchers clean and insert it through the fireplace openings. The animal slides down to the room with the oversized scales. The men hang the slabs on the ceiling hooks of the gigantic fridge. Sounds cannot be heard through the fridge doors, so my brother and I play hide and seek, screaming when we come upon each other. In our school uniforms, we jump through the opening onto the bloody slide and end up on our bottoms in the weighing room. In our blood-stained clothes, we leap on the scales. The needle points frantically right, both of us on the scale bouncing with laughter, until one of us would slide off the wet platform. True story.
I just realized I wasn't unmuted. I wasn't muted as you were reading. So Raju was probably in the background of your reading.
I can
Okay.
hear. Yeah.
All right. Good. I'm going to read one from Dor, which is relapse. And it comes from, or it begins with an epigraph from Adam Zagajewski. This beautiful thing he said: every elegy always conceals the hope that the miracle it celebrates, the miracle of someone's life, of some event, will come into being once again. A poem's mystery is always ahead of us. He has some, I love reading his memoirs because he's one of those rare people who admits he was wrong and is constantly changing his mind and constantly, I don't know, not set in anything or always challenging his own thinking and himself. So this is, I guess, an elegy, but about my mom in a sense. Relapse. In the car, bleary-eyed, we downshift past a dying bird. The struggle to untangle broken bones, steal a step forward. What life believes death when it arrives? A desert monk named Agathon lived for 3 years with a stone in his mouth, so he might learn to keep silent. When we return to a space without words, it is a relapse. I rise from bed with an image of mom, remembering the image is all she left. The bitter buzz of whiplash, a was, a was, a wasing. Stages of grief are closer to stadiums where we sit and engage the world, schools where we learn to spectate. Even if death is nothing which happens on stage, but a galaxy we can't see beyond. Maybe these are different doors, and I'm starved for a label. Suicide, a door that closes us. Euthanasia, a door we ask others to shut. A story about consent and how we honor other bodies. And something else, a mother's death, unspeakable as exquisite sex, unfathomable ravage, the knot and ruin of a good life. The bird's beak, the wings crunch, the innocent blizzard.
Alina, if you agree, I would say let's let that one echo for a minute. And Pramila, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we can break for at least a couple of questions here.
Of
We
course.
are almost to the end. We started a bit late. So I had a question about the poems that depict violence, especially the dad poems and also the one with the when the money runs out. There's a question for Adela. I'm wondering, do you write about the same idea through many poems before you're able to, you feel that you're close to what you want to say in that one poem, which you just read, for example?
Certainly, Pramila. There's so many permutations, and I don't like to read immediately what I had written. And then I take a pause, a pregnant pause, and I go back to certain poems and I put them in a pile, and I find thematics or things that are trying to work themselves out through the poems. And since it's a witness poetry with creative permissions to enter the space from any angle, I have to let it sit and kind of pickle there for a while, and barely do I get close to saying what I really want to say, ever. But I take leaps, and some of these that I shared are very new and haven't been fully digested nor edited. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was some really powerful lines in the dad poem, and I saw the connections actually with the first poem that you read, Little Insect,
Right.
and the DNA and the whole idea of endurance, and that seems to link through many of the poems. Some of these ideas. And of course, as poets, we have those same things repeat through many poems. And also in Alina's, like there are some wonderful images, and then we keep coming back to them in some of the poems. Um, and the feminine presence, like you mentioned, Adela, about Alina's poetry, that is very much there, all through. And the image of the mother in her poems. And in yours, it's like the image of the dad. Um, so, Alina, so when you're writing about the mom, is that one way for you to connect with your birth country? You're muted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I think I connect to it in some ways without her, or I connected to it without her. The summers and the time that I spent there, she wasn't usually there, and many of the times that I've gone, she hasn't been there. So I had a very wild and interesting time when I was able to go to Romania. It was a sort of a mind-opening time. There were a lot of people who wanted to talk about philosophy, and I was in my teens, and none of my friends in Alabama wanted to talk about philosophy or even had read it. We don't really learn it in school here. And so it was just a very different, I think my connection, I've always described it as like, there's something that speaks to me there. There's an ongoing conversation. My mom, the poems with my mom are, an attempt to sort of deal with the suddenness of her unexpected death and how close I was to her. I mean, we bought a house right beside hers. She was very much a part of my life, and it seems unfair that she who loved life so much would lose it. And people who don't, I don't like Mother's Day. Like, for example, I have
But what does come through, but even though you have the elegy, I mean, what comes through is the very delicate enunciation of, the images of things that are inexpressible, like the angels, like the poem you read about Saint Maximus, or even pacing as you pace the garden. I mean, as you, what is it? Tonight as you pace the garden. So I was just enjoying just listening to all those images and sort of just feeling the presence of all of these other, connections with nature, with other creatures, uh, other multiple presences. And it was a beautiful human nature connection that we saw in many of the poems. At least I did.
I think it is an iconography. I mean, it's interesting that you say that. My mom loved icons. She had so many of them. And so I inherited them. And my husband is very religious in a way. Like, I don't know how to describe it. And I'm sort of on the outside, but he and my mom were very close in their intense seeking. Both of them were intensely spiritually driven. And so there's conversations that I had with her that I continue with him. And so sometimes the interlocutor in the poems is her, but also him.
Yeah.
She taught him how to cook all her Romanian recipes.
Oh, that's interesting.
So he's the one that knows all of those things. I don't know them. So there's this interesting sort of way. She loved him. And so there's this interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you for noticing that.
So I'd like to open it up to other people who have questions. We are near the end of our time.
I'm just wondering for both of you, really, like how your poems are so stunning, how you enter the memories? Like, do they come to you and are you like, this is a poem, this is where I want to go? Or, you know, just what that's like how Romania arrives to you for the writing.
Thank you for the question, Raluca. Whew. Um, for me, the memories of Romania are much closer than the memories of high school, college. My 20s, my 30s are a blur. And I exercised, I was part of Madison Poets for 10 years with people who survived concentration camps, the war, Mussolini, and everything. So it was a lot of trauma in one room, to be honest. I could not even express mine because I was feeling that I shouldn't and so on. But what they had done with me and with them, what we did together was to take words that were like lamp, clock, watch, any kind of object, small object, table, that is the most banal object you can, shirt. And the poem Shirt by Robert Pinsky is one of the most brilliant poems out there. And from that, I propelled myself into this memory that I had to capture somehow. And I'm kind of like, you know, if you put me with a bunch of money flying around, I'm kind of trying to captivate every single bill, you know, from all directions instead of focusing on one and capturing, you know, the one thing. So, but yeah, that's how I kind of like dived into some of the poems that I had written in the collection La Ravedera.
I guess that's also true with any kind of violence that we deal with, right? Because like some of the violence that we deal with and we're afraid to write about it because we don't want family members to read it, right? But at the same time, you know, one can have that same kind of practice of looking at something so banal and that propels the memory of what happened. And then, you know, you express, you know, the kind of things that you may never have really articulated earlier. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I don't know. Look, this stuff is everywhere. You know, there are words, there are the writers I read. A lot of the writers that I read are Romanian. I'm doing a lot of translating recently. And so that's also sort of putting me back in this space and, you know, looking at the relationships between in contemporary Armenian poetics and looking at how feminism there is interestingly different, but also I don't know. Feminism itself is like a complicated word for me, but it's the differences, the cultural differences fascinate me. I'm always fascinated by things I don't understand, and I'm always fascinated by things that reveal to me the way that I think or the assumptions that I don't understand that I have. And so there's this sense in which, you know, I will pick up something and it will speak into that space. And also it's my imaginary land. Romania is my imaginary land. So it's invented. I mean, the Romania I'm writing, it doesn't really exist. It's the homeland in my head. It can't exist. It shouldn't exist. If it existed, it would be a horrible. I hope that none of our nations ever completely exist in the way that we dream of them. Right? The nationalism is a real issue, but
yeah.
But I think having creative nostalgia is really
Yeah. Well, on that happy note, that we have these imaginary homelands that we create. I mean, it's a wonderful thought that we can leave with. So thank you all for coming. And thank you so much, Alina and Adela. This was truly a remarkable hour of poetry, extremely enjoyable. And if you're interested, I can send you a link of to the recording, so you can let Carmen or me know about that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Pramila, and thank you everyone for showing up and being here. Love you all. Thank you so much.
It was an honor to read and to be in the same space with you, Adela, and to hear your powerful poems.
Yes, I'm intoxicated with everything we've exchanged and delved into tonight. Yes.
Thank you, Pamela, so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.